Good day everyone, it's Duncan from Overland Journals. Thank you for tuning in to another weekly video. And in this video, which is a continuation of my safety when overlanding series, I'm going to talk about this little gadget here, which can be a lifesaver if the need arose. And I think every overlander should have one. Alright, so welcome back everyone. Now, safety is paramount when overlanding, and I think each and every one of us should pay attention, a lot of attention to that. Now, I know it's easy, and I've been there myself. We get caught up in all the other fancy accessories that we like to carry with us and fit onto our 4x4s. But safety is one of those things where I feel many of us tends to sort of overlook or kind of do it, but without paying too much attention to exactly what you need when you're going out there. Now I'm going to share with you in this series, what I'm sharing with you is how I've taken certain safety precautions, or cheap insurance you could call it. Now in our case, most of you who've been following my channel would know that it's myself and my wife that we travel. We do travel in convoy, and it's not to say that we don't, but whether we travel in convoy or we travel alone, there are certain safety aspects that I pay attention to. And one of the things is what happens when you're out in the middle of nowhere, and if something goes wrong, say maybe in a medical emergency or you get bitten by a snake, you never know. It's one of those things you hope will never happen, but you've got to be prepared if it did happen. So in today's video, it's about a product called a PLB, a Personal Locator Beacon. Now it's not only in Australia, but anywhere in the world. It's something I feel you should have. So I'm going to get into it and talk about this PLB, this little gadget here, which I got myself and which I carry with me whenever I travel. If you're new to my channel, thank you for checking it out. Please do consider subscribing. I try to bring out a video every week. My channel is all about sharing my experiences in overlanding with the rest of the community and also learning from everybody else. If you're already a subscriber, thank you very much for the support. I really appreciate it, guys. You guys get me to do what I do and travel, so thank you for that. So what is a locator beacon and why is it essential for overlanders? Well, locator beacons are not just for overlanders. It can be for anybody who's traveling into remote areas or out into the seas, hiking and that sort of thing, where in case of an emergency, all you have to do is set it off, and immediately on setting it off, it sends a signal via satellite to your local search and rescue center. So it's simple as that. And there are different types of beacons in the market, three particularly. The one I'm going to talk about and which I feel is essential for or suitable for overlanders like ourselves is a PLB, and that stands for Personal Locator Beacon. And that's this little gadget here. Now I'll get more into detail into this particular product a little later on in the video, but that's a PLB, a Personal Locator Beacon. So there are three different types of locator beacons you can buy in the market. So PLB, like I mentioned earlier, that stands for Personal Locator Beacon, and that's more suitable for individuals. You can carry it in a vehicle, but it's more for an individual. The second type is called EPIRB, EPIRB, that stands for Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon, more suitable for vehicles, and it's more designed for maritime use. So it's a locator beacon that stays in a boat. So if you go out into the high seas and you have an emergency, then emergency services can pinpoint exactly where your vehicle is, which is a boat or a ship or so on. And the third type is known as an ELT. So of the three different types of emergency beacons, the PLB, the Personal Locator Beacon, is the most suitable for overlanders like ourselves. The other two are meant to be in the vehicle. It's meant for the vehicle. So if in the case of an EPIRB stays in your boat because it's mainly designed for maritime use. And then the third one, the ELT, stays in an aircraft. So it's easy for search and rescue teams to locate where your vehicle is. But in the case of Overlanders, we don't necessarily always stay in our vehicle. You know, we will be in our vehicle up to a certain point, then we get off the vehicle, we might go for a hike, and the PLB can be carried on you as an individual, and that's why it's so versatile for us Overlanders. Now, something to keep in mind when you're getting yourself a PLB is to make sure it's GPS enabled. Almost all the products out there in the market are GPS enabled these days, but just keep that in the back of your mind, because there are two different types. There's GPS enabled ones, and then there are those that are more radio transmitters. So the difference is the response times, or getting that signal from the time you set it off from your unit to the research and rescue center is a lot quicker with a GPS enabled unit. It's kind of like stating the obvious, because your signal travels through the GPS satellite system and that's a lot quicker. Usually from what I've done in my research, what I've understood is that response times, or the signal will reach the response center within under 20 minutes, whereas with the radio signal type it can take up to as much as 5 hours, and that's just how the technology works. So, you know, make sure that when you get it, it's GPS enabled. So how does this all work? So it's quite easy. You go to an authorized dealer and you get yourself a PLB. Now, usually when you go to a retailer, they can recommend to you the product that best suits you, and there are different brands and models out there. Another useful place, if you're in Australia, and I'm sure it'll be in any other country as well, if you go to the government website, and I'll leave for Australia, I'll leave the useful links in the description below. They will give you a listing of all the certified or government recommended model makes and models that's suitable for Australian use. So basically, once you get yourself a PLB, you go online and there's a registration process you go through. I'll leave those links in the description as well. It's very easy. In my case, it took me less than 10 minutes to get the registration done. It's a free service that the government provides. It doesn't cost us anything apart from the cost of the purchase of the unit. That's it. It doesn't cost anything thereafter. Each PLB comes with a UIN, which is a unique identification number, and you put that number into the registration forms that you get online, and then link it to your name and your details, put in your emergency contact details and so on, and then that's it, you're good to go. Now the unit itself costs around, here in Australia, costs between $250 and $350 to $400 Aussie dollars, that is, and that's it. You purchase it and that's it. Thereafter you pay nothing. The battery that comes in the unit, usually depending on the model, make and model that you purchase, lasts between 6 to 10 years. And at the end of that period, you either purchase another one, or if you want to just replace the battery, you cannot just replace the battery yourself. You got to send it to a place that does the battery replacements, because it's all highly controlled and regulated. But it doesn't cost too much. In my research, I found for the unit that I bought, the replacement, that's a battery as well as the replacement work that goes into it, it's about 90 Aussie dollars. So it's not much if you want to do it after that period of time. But if you're kept it for 10 years, you might as well go for the most latest unit that's available at that point in time. Also, to keep in mind when you're buying a PLB, here in Australia, we used to have PLBs or any all types of beacons that used to transmit it at 121.5 megahertz. Now that's been discontinued. The government no longer recommends those, no longer accepts those. So the unit that you buy, you got to make sure it's 406 megahertz. That's a far better frequency to work on. The responses are much better. So make sure it's one of those. It's very unlikely that any retailer that you go to will be selling the old frequency, but if you happen to buy a used one or second hand from somebody else, or you happen to buy it from eBay or someplace like that, make sure it's not 121.5 megahertz, because if it is 121.5 megahertz, you cannot even register it. So be aware of that. Now, throughout this video, I want to keep emphasizing the importance of this. It's one of those cheap insurances that you can have in place when you go overlanding, and hopefully you'll never have to use it, but if the event arises, then you got it in place, so you're covered. And it's like I said again at the beginning of the video, is you can use it if you're on your own, or if you're even in a convoy, because supposing you're the only one in the convoy that happens to have one of those, and something did go wrong with maybe somebody else, you're all in the same place, set the beacon off, and that's it, and you wait for help to arrive. So it's very, very useful. So now for the unit that I bought. So there are a number of different brands and models out there in the market. The one I bought is called, the brand name is ACR, and it's called the Rescue Link Plus. So the reason why I went for this particular make and model is because it's very small, so it's easy to carry, because I'm going to have it in my 4x4, so it can be neatly tucked away somewhere. It doesn't take up much space. At the same time, if I'm going for a walk, hike, or whatever, it's easy to carry. And to put it in perspective, here's my phone. So that's my phone, and that's the PLB. You can get a good idea of how small it is. So if I'm to put it there you go. It's pretty small and easy to carry and quite light. And if I feel the weight, if that makes any difference, I actually find it lighter than my phone. Of course, my phone's got a case as well, so it adds a bit of weight, but nevertheless, it's still lighter. So it's very light and easy to carry. And at the same time, it's got a 66 channel GPS. What that means is that it can acquire the GPS signal really quick. It can float, so if by chance it fell into water, stream or river or whatever, it'll float. And it's pretty easy. And how it works is, in the case of an emergency, now what's important is this part here. Now that needs to face the sky for it to get that signal direct link up to the satellite. So that's very important. So in this particular unit, so all you do is unlatch the antenna. So what wraps around here, as you can see, is the antenna. So what you do is you unhook the antenna, that stick, and then you raise it up, and then you place it on the ground like that. All right, so the antenna faces the sky. It has to get a clear view of the sky. So don't put it under a tree or where there's any obstacle or obstruction. Don't do that. So it's clear sky it needs, facing up. And then this unit, the pickup point has to face the sky as well. So that's it. So you put it down. And once you've done that, there are two buttons on the side here. So one is a test button. You can read about that once you get your product. Each product will have a test button. That's to test, make sure it's functioning properly. You can go through the instruction manual once you get your unit. But the other button, the most important button, is the activation button, which is the one here in this particular unit. So what you do is you press that for 1 second, and then that sets off the signal, and that's it. So you set it off and you just leave it until help arrives. So to share with you a few other useful things that I do, and in particular relation to the PLB, before I go on a trip, whether it's a long trip or a short trip, it doesn't matter. What I do is I go to the Australian Maritime Safety Authority's website, and by the time you've done the registration through that particular website, you already have your own account set up anyway. So I go in there, and then what I do is I register all the travel itinerary that I have planned. So where I'm going, where I'm planning to stay, on which days. I put as much information as possible, because in the event of an emergency, then all that information is available to the authorities and the rescue teams. At the same time, now at the time of setting up the account, I would have put in various emergency contact details. I've put in 3 good friends, and that would already be in there. But if I needed to update it, for example, then I would do so at that point. And then thereafter, so that's taken care of. And then another thing I do is I tell those 3 contacts about it, or 3 emergency contacts of my travel and where I'm going, so they're aware as well. And then I also carry a very powerful strobe light, and one of those lightweight ones that you can carry. And more importantly, I carry a couple of flares. Now you can get them from any outdoor store, and I carry a couple of flares. And the whole idea is, once you've set off this and you're waiting for that rescue to arrive, you want to try and make it easier for the rescue teams to find you. So particularly if it is at night, you can either light a fire. But then if you think about it, depending on what kind of an emergency it is, you may not be in a position to be able to put up a fire. But if you got something like a flare, you can set that flare off, and when set it off when you hear the rescue teams in the distance, set it off, and that'll help them to locate your position. So you're kind of helping them along as much as the PLB is doing its job. Also worth mentioning, and this is very, very important, a PLB or any form of beacon should only be set off as the last resort. It's in dire strait situations. If you set it off for any other reason which is not dire straits, where you could have got a message across to someone by some other means without having to get all the rescue teams across, you'll get in big trouble. So be aware of that. So it's a last resort in dire straits situations. That's extremely important. I've heard of a few cases here in Australia where the guys just set it off simply because they got lost and it wasn't life and death, and then the search and rescue teams had to come, and it was a pure waste of time for them, and then these guys got fined. Apparently it was about 50 to 60,000 Australian dollars, and you can't blame them because all that resources went in because some person didn't plan a way out of their situation, so it was not life and death. So that's the important thing. It can only be used if it is life and death, dire straits situation. So remember that. Also need mentioning is that this is not the only form of emergency preparation you should take with you. So in my case, I've got this. I've got my cell phone signal booster, which if I can get a signal strong enough through the booster, which I can phone someone, and I also carry a sat phone. So don't rely entirely on this, and I keep emphasizing on this. This is only for dire straits, life or death situations. So I hope you found this video useful. If you liked it, please do give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. I will leave a number of useful links in the description so that you can go and check out the various information that's available for the Australian viewers. If you're overseas, go and check out your own local government or rescue websites. It works in many countries around the world, so it's useful. If you are an overlander anywhere in the world, I think you should have one of these. So once again, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them in the comments below. And in my next episode of my safety series, I'm going to talk about I'll tell you about it later, but I'm going to tell you where I keep this in my 4B. Thanks for watching.